One of the environmental issues that most people are concerned about is pollution. And pollution is actually very loosely defined as the introduction of anything into the environment that ought not to be there. So it can be a physical material like sewage or the outfall from some factory or plastic waste, but it can also be things like sound or light pollution, which can also influence animals in the environment. So in the marine environment, there are three main categories of pollution. First of all, there's accidental pollution, and then there are planned outfalls, and then there's what we term diffuse pollution, which is just the throwing away of things into the marine environment. So accidental pollution is very difficult to manage because, of course, it's an accident, so you don't know when it's going to happen. And the only thing that you can really do about it is to plan for it. So the two main things that happen are where ships either leak or wreck onto the shoreline, and then very often you'll get leakage of oil from the ships. That's one of the best publicized of accidental pollution events. But these accidental pollution events can also originate on the land, where, for example, you have a flood which overwhelms a sewage farm and washes all the material into the ocean, or it floods a factory which maybe has dangerous chemicals in it, which then flow down the river into the ocean. But the main thing is we can't really predict when these events are going to occur. So all we can do is to be ready for the events when they do happen, so that we have cleanup teams in place, or else we have things like booms, floating booms that we can put in the water to contain the pollutant. So this is the most difficult type of pollution to manage. The second category of pollution are planned outfalls. So this is where we actually engineer a structure out into the sea to deliberately carry either sewage or very often the effluent from large factories out into the ocean, instead of actually building a treatment plant on land to process that sewage. And we're standing here at Greenpoint in Cape Town in front of the largest sewage outfall in the Western Cape. It actually extends much further out than you can see underwater for a kilometre or so. But it releases 40 million litres of raw sewage. That's 40,000 cubic metres of sewage every single day. It's the largest outfall in the Cape, but there are two other sewage outfalls in Camps Bay and Hout Bay in Cape Town, and a number of others further up the coast, particularly in the Durban area. So the thing with these outfalls is that they just sieve the water to remove large items, and then they macerate it, so they just mince it up, and then they pump it down a pipe into the sea.
That's a big growth. Just like we swim nearby here.
Yeah, and these guys on their kayaks out in the ocean here are actually very close to the outfall.
Isn't it a health problem?
Obviously it's not ideal, and that sewage disperses quite quickly, so the visible environmental impacts on the benthic animals in the sea only extend for a few hundred meters. But part of the reason for that is that the sewage is freshwater, and that tends to float in the seawater, so it comes out of the pipe and it floats upwards rather than affecting the animals that are living on the seafloor. But obviously the bacteria and the chemicals in that water, when the winds blow inshore, they do come onto adjacent beaches here. And this outfall and all the other outfalls, in fact, are quite close, a kilometre or so from fairly popular bathing beaches. So this is not perfect, but you have to weigh up the cost of actually building a plant on the land and fully processing that sewage, which in a expensive area like we're in here in a high density urban area would cost literally billions of rand. So a decision has to be made whether to spend that money and process it on land, which everybody, the municipality included, agrees is the ideal scenario, or whether to spend that money on other priorities and keep pumping out here. This this line has been running for over a century, although it's been modernized a number of times. Most of the warnings about swimming actually derive from the other type of sewage, the diffuse pollution that we're going to talk about next. And that's because those diffuse outlets, the stormwater drains, actually pour straight onto the beaches. The third category of pollution is what we call diffuse pollution. And this is material that's often washed from the land, down stormwater drains, sometimes from townships where there's a lot of feces in the stormwater channels, and then it gets washed onto the beaches. And it also includes material that's just left behind by beachgoers, or material which is thrown off ships and gets washed ashore. So it's often quite nasty stuff. There's a lot of fecal contamination in the stormwater drain material. There's a lot of plastics. And the main problem about it is that it's completely uncontrolled. So there's absolutely no control about what comes down, how much comes down. There's no purification, no maceration of the material. It just comes down exactly as it got thrown away and gets cast ashore. The coastline of South Africa is about 3,800 kilometers long. That's 3.8 million meters. And there are 60-odd million people living in South Africa. So there are about 20 people per meter of shoreline. If each person in South Africa threw away just one plastic bottle per year, that would be enough bottles to make a continuous line that went 3 times around the entire coastline. So every bottle that you throw away is significant. Even if you only throw a few a year, it's going to make a huge difference.
So for me that begs the question, and I think a lot of people are going to have this question, is what can we do about it?
Well, it's quite simple. What we can do about it is that we can recycle this plastic material and not throw away these plastic bottles. I mean, I have used the same plastic water bottle for years. I just take it home, fill it up from the tap, and put it in the fridge and take it out with me next time. I've got one in my backpack here, which I've had for ages. So we don't throw these things away, or if you are going to throw them away, throw them into a dirt bin and not into the street where they're just going to wash down the stormwater drain and end up in the sea. And of course what you can do is pick them up when you're on the beach. So I've also got a little netting bag in my backpack here, and when we leave now I'm going to fill it up with pieces of plastic and take it home and put it in my recycling bin.
It's Nurdles!
One of the most common forms of plastic pollution that one finds on the beach are what are called Nurdles. And Nurdles are little tiny beads of plastic, and that's the way in which plastic is transported in bulk shipping. So they just pump these Nurdles onto the ships, tons and tons and tons of them, and then they sail to wherever they're going to, and then they pump them off. And in that whole process, millions of Nurdles just fall into the sea, or if one of these ships sinks, then billions of Nurdles get released into the water. So every meter of beach, when you walk along, it's just covered in these tiny little plastic particles.
And these are quite dangerous for birds, right? Because
they can be quite dangerous because animals like birds and turtles can mistake them for food, and then they eat them, but they can't digest them. So they think they're full, and then they just starve to death. All these little plastic items on the seashore also break up to form what we call microplastics. So these are little microscopic plastic particles, and they're fed upon by filter feeding animals like mussels, and they actually get incorporated into their flesh. So almost every organism in the sea has microplastic particles in its body, and they're quite serious contaminants.
And then we end up eating those, right?
So we end up eating them, yeah. So every time you eat a mussel, you're probably eating a certain number of little microplastic particles, or even fish get microplastics in their flesh.
This is just one of the many creatures and features that we dive into in our new Explore the Shore book, available in stores now. Hit subscribe for more.